Hello friends, Miss Natalie here. Today I'm going to show you how I painted the background of my Impressionistic landscape painting. You can see I have all my paints out that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to use that reference image from the assignment page just to capture the colors. So you can see I'm using a piece of foil as my palette, and I'm using brushes that came with the set. I'm going to start with the flat brush. I also have a cup of water in case for washing out my brush, and I'll have a paper towel for cleaning my brush. I'm going to start building a color that's a little bit lighter than the blue, and mixing that together. So adding some white and some blue. One thing maybe adding a little water to it to make it a little bit thinner, but I don't really do that so much. And I'm also keeping some of the straight color on my brush. So I'm having a multitude of colors. Well, 3 in this case, white, blue, and the in-between color. And I'm starting with those bold strokes, putting down a layer, adding some of the darker blue to it so that I get some differentiation between the strokes so you can kind of see. Realizing my paint is maybe a little bit too thin and I need to use thicker paint, but I'm still working on it, working around, looking at my image and seeing the places where is the sky more blue and where is it more pink. And so I'm just going in where the blue parts are right now, starting with the blue. You can see some of the blue bits are a bit white. I'm letting some of the paper show through, but not a lot of it. But I'm still doing those bold marks. And once my paint runs out on my brush, going back for more. And I am having to go back to the paint again and again for this particular painting. You're going to use a lot of paint on this painting if you're doing it with paint. Now, if you're going to do this as a drawing, this would not be the tutorial to watch. But if you're going to do this as an impressionist painting, just like I do, be prepared to use a lot of that paint. And I'm going back with that acid blue and just adding some straight bold marks of that in. As I said, I'm working in the areas of the painting where you can definitely see the blue of the sky. And realizing that maybe my initial marks are too long, and so I'm trying to make them maybe a little shorter and a little choppier and just a little bit more impressionistic. And now I'm going to come in with that pink of the clouds and just kind of dab. And one thing I'm not doing is squishing my brush end. You can see I'm more or less using the side of the brush and just kind of setting it down on the paper. And yeah, I'm getting paint off of the side of the paper, which means that my black background is not going to be used ever again, but that's okay. I put something down just to keep my table from getting messy. I recommend you do the same. It doesn't have to be a big black piece of poster board. Newspapers, if you have them, old paper bags. Paper bags are a great thing. Or cardboard boxes also work too to keep your table messy because you're going to want to work to the edge of the paper. All right, I'm putting in more marks here, kind of letting some of those pink and blues kind of blend together a little bit, but in a way that still preserves the individual colors. Adding more white. And maybe going straight in with some white and then picking up some of that light pink. You can see I'm working very impasto, which means having large blobs of paint that actually add texture to the paper, especially in the places where there are the clouds. And I'm going to also come in with some other pinks and blues. One thing I do a lot in this painting, I mentioned it before, but I really just want to reiterate, is I get multiple colors on my paintbrush at the same time so that they kind of are blending together while I'm painting and kind of on my brush. And I'm putting some more marks everywhere that I feel like the clouds need to be. I'm putting that slightly pink white in and making lots of marks. I want to create movement. I want it to feel like the sky and the clouds. There's some wind happening, and I think it just general movement in the painting. That is one of the requirements of this assignment, that you have bold marks with applied movement. So I think I am achieving that, adding some more pinks kind of behind the mountain especially. I really feel like in the painting it almost looks like the mountain is glowing a little bit. Now I'm going to rinse off my brush. I've rinsed my brush out between each color. And I think I'm going to actually set that flat brush in there for a little bit and go get my round brush. Or not. Nope, not getting my round brush. Sorry, I was getting a paper towel. That's what I was getting. You want to make sure you wipe out your brush on a paper towel or a rag that you can throw away. You do not want any paint to go down your drain. Paint will ruin your pipes. All right, now I'm ready for the mountain. I'm going to take some of that navy blue, and I'm just going to start putting maybe some of these shadowy parts. I might pick up a little bit of the acid blue as well. Make it maybe even a little white to make it a little softer, a little less bright, because it is in the distance, and things in the distance are fuzzier. They are smaller in relation to everything else, and they have a blue hint to them because of atmospheric perspective. So that's why I'm going with navy blue instead of a gray, because that there's that blue to the atmospheric perspective. And then I'm trying to use like the edge of my brush here to do some dabs and pulling that back in. Basically everywhere where there isn't snow or there is a shadow, that's where I'm putting in that color and trying to dull it down with a little white, and maybe even pulling a little bit of the purple in to make it a little bit darker in those darker areas, and just dabbing it gently. If your individual threads, hairs of your brush are splaying out, you're pressing too hard. Your paintbrush is your friend. You're not trying to beat it into submission. You're just touching the paper lightly with your brush. And yes, it does take time. And you can see it's a lot of little tiny rapid brush strokes here. And they're not terribly individual right now, but I'm going to start and come in with some of that blue and white. It has white, but there's still some blue in it. So it's not a pure white per se. And just kind of dabbing in, making light but bold brush strokes. And coming back and taking some pure white and putting it in spots. Again, thick bits of paint, very impasto. Wiping out my brush, making sure that when I move from one color to the other, that I am wiping it out so it doesn't stick. And now I'm actually trying to sharpen up the edge of my mountain just with the very, very end of the brush, kind of smoothing it out just a little bit before I go back in with those dabs. There we go. I'm also making the edges a little darker. Now I'm coming back with just some pure blue to put those shadows back in that I kind of went over too much with the white. And a lot of this is just looking at your picture, looking at what you've done, thinking about it, and trying to figure something else out. So now I'm going to take that light blue and put it into my navy blue, the acid blue, to make the foothills of Mount Hood. And I'm seeing that there's not a lot of differentiation between the foothills and the mountains. So I probably need to change up my colors and maybe add a little bit more white or a little bit more of the acid blue. A lot of this, for me, you're watching me figure this out in real time, because this was the first time I've done a painting of this reference image. I've done a drawing of this reference image. I've done painting of other reference images, but this is the first time for this one. So I'm just trying to figure it out, trying to do what I can, working quickly, just like the Impressionists did, making those bold marks and working with the color scheme that I've laid down. And I feel like if you do what I do, you'll have a successful artwork. Your artwork does not have to look like mine. See, I'm going back and I'm thinking, you know what? I need to make part of these foothills lighter so they don't blend into my mountain. Yours does not have to look like mine, especially if you just decide to go more post-impressionist and do more of a emotional based color scheme rather than trying to match the color scheme of the photo. But you should still be using these bold marks, loading up your brush with multiple colors, and thinking about the general layout of the reference image. But I'm about done here. I'm just going to make a few more things, and then I'm going to be ready to move on to my middle ground. So go out and paint your background.